Hi, I'm Kevin Eikenberry, the founder and facilitator of Virtual LeaderCon. What follows is one of the sessions from Virtual LeaderCon 2020, just one of the nearly 40 experts that I had join me, experts in leadership development, organizational development, and personal development. Hope you enjoy this session, and you can learn more about Virtual LeaderCon 2021 and how to join for free the week of September the 20th at virtualleadercon.com. If you miss the live sessions, lots of information and ways to get access to great content like what you're about to see, again, available at virtualleadercon.com. And now on with the session. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to those that weren't in the first opening session and are joining us here. We're glad you're here. And Guy Harris and I did not, I'll introduce him in a second, we did not talk about shirt choices. On the other hand, he pretty much knew what shirt I'd be wearing because this is my video uniform, as it turns out. So I don't know if you chose that or whatever, Guy, but.
Well, kind of like you, Kevin, I have a standard video uniform, and it tends to be in the blue, very light purple range of shirt.
Yeah, Guy has an awesome purple shirt, by the way. There was this whole conversation about shirts yesterday. I mean, the first day someone asked me why I wear blue. And then one day there was this whole conversation. Everyone's saying I should change colors every year. And lavender didn't show up in that whole thing. And if I'm not careful, the team will come up with a poll to figure out what my next shirt should be. There you go. So here's Angie, vote pink shirt. You all just planned on twinning today. We did not. Kirsten, you're getting this figured out, Kirsten. If this is your first day, you're already welcome to the family. You're getting this already figured out. Guy Harris and I have known each other for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. I do not have a bio here for him because I don't need one. He's a fabulous guy. He's a smart guy. I think my daughter likes him more than she likes me. Some days anyway, because anytime I say I would talk to Guy today, she says, "Oh, I love Guy Harris." That's what she says every time. It's a guarantee.
Kelsey, it's awesome.
There you go. So Guy and I co-wrote this book from Bud to Boss. You see his name right down there. And we're going to give away a copy of this during this session. Here's how we're going to do that. When we're done, Guy, you can see that question button down there. At the end, when we're done, You're going to pick someone that asked a question, and we're going to give them a copy of this book. So that means y'all have to ask questions, because if you don't, right? Real men wear salmon. I have a salmon shirt.
He does.
I'm not going to wear it here, but I have a salmon shirt. Okay, so that's how you can win a copy of Bud to Boss. If you ask a question and Guy picks you. Guy and I wrote another book together. It's actually a companion. And this is the first time I've shown it here. My Journey from Bud to Boss. This is basically a application workbook to the things that are in the actual book. This is available on Amazon. It's available everywhere. Available on our website. It's available on Amazon. Here's what we'll do. You're going to pick someone that asked the question. We're going to give them both, Guy. How about that?
Cool.
We'll give them both.
Sounds good.
So we're going to talk about Beneath the Models. Here's the title. Beneath the Models, how to better understand and communicate with those different than ourselves. So along with being an expert at working with new supervisors, along with being an expert at conflict resolution and helping people reduce conflict and all of those things. So Lisa, get that question, or someone on the team, get that question over in the questions, because that Lisa's question should be over there in the questions. We make sure it gets counted. There we go. So along with being an expert in those things, Guy Harris is a world expert in the DISC assessment. So we're going to talk some about DISC today, and we'll use it as our examples, but it will apply if you use a different model or you're familiar with a different model. Just replace some of the ideas, because it will absolutely apply. But I am curious, if you have done DISC for yourself, just put your DISC profile over there, or your primary or dominant trait over there. Marissa's done hers. Just do that. Marissa went all out, primary, secondary, but just put them in there if you have it. Okay. And if you've never done DISC and you're like, I don't want to be left out, we have a DISC assessment, right? We have a DISC assessment that Guy Harris created and that we've been selling for how many years, Guy?
7, I think.
So, and there the list for that is up there. Here's the thing. If you're feeling left out now because you can't put letters down because you've never done the DISC assessment, before the end of this session, we're going to give away 2 of them. And so if you've not done DISC, just put over there a question, put a question mark, and then we'll know you haven't done it. If you just put a question mark, and we'll pick 2 of those people at the end of the session to give you a free disc assessment. How's that sound, guys? Does that work?
Sounds good.
All right. One more thing. We had a guest on the other day, Guy, and I think you were there for Nate, and I know that you know Nate. He wrote a book called Seeing People Through, and he talks about a different model, but he talks about some of the same kinds of things that we talk about. There are the questions. They're showing up. That's awesome. So, Lisa, make sure you're picking a couple of those people before we're done, okay? But Nate was on with us the other day and talked about this book. We're going to give away a copy of this book. If you're on Twitter and you go on Twitter and you talk about the session, if you put hashtag virtualleadercon, if you put virtualleadercon.com and say, I'm here, you ought to join us, something really nice that would get people to come join us, one of those people, Chuck will pick a name. We'll give away a copy of that book before we're done. Okay, I've got all of that out of the way, Guy. So let's get started, buddy. First of all, I'm guessing that you've already figured out that Guy and I have different styles.
We hide it well, Kevin.
So if you already noticed that maybe we have different styles other than someone on the team. So Guy, why don't you talk about, let's just start there, because we have quite different styles. And yet we have worked together very successfully. We've written a book together. So why don't we start there? We're going to talk about better understanding, communicating with those different. We're different. So why don't you start there?
So I saw one question fly by in the chat, like what DISC is. So maybe I'll just define that first.
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
The general idea is that DISC model, DISC, is a human behavior model. And I guess the easiest way to think about it is it's like a map of the terrain we live in when we interact with other people. So we bring different perspectives to the table. And the quick description is that some people are more outgoing, some people more reserved. Kevin would be on the more outgoing side. I'd be on the more reserved side. So if you notice, Kevin talks fast and pretty loud. I
got the note right here, Guy, that says coaching voice, but I have a hard time with the combination of coaching voice and energy.
Well, because they're not necessarily the same thing.
I know, but I know. Go ahead.
And I'm more reserved, so I'm a little slower to engage. And what is a normal voice for Kevin is yelling for Guy. So at least how it sounds in my head. So I tend to talk a little softer, a little slower. And then there's a task versus people orientation. Task orientation being focused on people, on getting things done, checking things off the list, data and results, versus people, which is relationships and sharing and caring. You put all that together, you have these 4 quadrants called the DISC model, and it gives us a way to engage and interact. So the differences are Kevin would be more from the DISC model, primarily in the I trait, a lot of D trait also, but inspiring and dominant, like engage, make things happen, interact with people, have fun, make things exciting and fun, and get stuff done. I'm more on the cautious side. Let's make sure we got this right. Let's not say anything until we've checked our data. Could we do a validation study first? So it makes us just a little bit different.
And so the team downstairs has been joking that my favorite word this week is audible. Let's try this. Let's do this. I'm gonna change it, everybody. And that's not necessarily what Guy would do. Guy did write a great blog post. Marissa's put it over there. And here's the other thing: we are going to give away a couple of the full assessments before we're done. We've already promised that we'll do that. But Marissa, when you get a chance, and maybe and Marissa, if it's on the CTA, you can just tell it that. So down below, you can see learn more about Guy. A bunch of stuff there about Guy. But we put it in there earlier. But we have a free version of the assessment that is available to anyone at any time. I think that's where you started, was with a free version.
Yep.
And it is on that button. Thank you, guys. So if you click the button, learn more about Guy Harris, you can get to a free assessment. So even if you end up winning one, you can do that when you get a chance. If you don't win, you can certainly still do that. So what led you to learn about this?
The story is, there are many facets to it, but it basically goes back to my primary nature, which is pretty reserved. And I joke about not liking to interact with people. It's probably more of a joke than reality. And it's not too far from reality, because chemical engineering degree as an undergrad, nuclear engineer in the Navy, got out of the Navy, went into chemical engineering, got a master's degree, like engineer. And I got into the business world, and I realized that people are not pumps, and neither are they electric circuits. And they're very confusing, and I didn't understand them. And a friend of mine gave me this book that had a purple cover, which at the time, this was my perspective at the time. Who publishes a book with a purple cover? This is stupid. I'm not proud of this perspective. It's where I started, though. And I started reading the book. And as I read the book, I figured out what was wrong with my wife. And then I realized—
He's happily married, by the way, in case you're worried that that's going to take us to another ending to the story.
yeah, I'm still married, right? We've been married over 30 years now. But the first observation was about my wife and what was wrong with her. And then I got to the section of the book about me, and I went, oh. And it started to slowly dawn on me that differences were affecting my personal relationships. And then gradually it occurred to me, uh-oh. I'm here.
Yeah,
Hello?
go ahead. I hear you perfectly.
Okay. All right. And then I realized, people that I work with are also humans. And so if the stuff I'm learning in my personal life works in my personal life, it probably works in my professional life. And it turned into, hey, this could help me be more effective with my team. And then I just started applying it and started getting fascinated with it and dug deeper and deeper and deeper over time. And that's what led me to it. It was first understanding people, and first with my wife, then my general family, then like people in general, then the connection. Wait, people at work are people. And I could use this there too. So that's what led me down that trail.
There you go. So, and I think, again, that does, if you've had the chance to learn a different model, or your organization uses a different model, that happens to be what we use. But we're largely agnostic, really, because what we're after with using the model is to give a language to talk about the stuff that we're going to talk about today. So again, we hope that you all don't get lost in DISC. We may do a little of that, but we're really trying to talk about this. So, okay. So you first learned about this, and this is the path that everyone goes down, right? You learn about it, and then we make a bunch of mistakes because we oversimplify it. So can you talk about the mistakes that you made, or really the mistakes that people make when they first learn about one of these things, and can cause you some challenges?
Well, I think, and it gets to like the titles, like getting past the model, that when we first engage with it, and there's a very human tendency, very natural response to try to oversimplify very complex things. And frankly, human behavior is very complex and not neatly and cleanly defined by any model. I've heard this phrase that, all models are flawed, some are useful. And that's where I came to with the DISC model. It's flawed. It's not perfect. It does give me a perspective. And the errors come and we try to oversimplify it, and we look at the behavior model, and then the behavior model turns into a label or a stereotype for a person. And we miss the idea that the model is talking about styles of communication or styles of behavior. It's not talking about styles of people. And we inadvertently connect those two. And then I'll say, oh, Kevin is an I, therefore I know everything about him. Probably not accurate.
So we've got 13 questions so far, and Guy, I'm going to get to one of them in a second, but all of you, if you don't have a question, you can go in and look at them, and you can vote to help me prioritize, because we ain't going to get through them. I promise you already, we're not going to get through all of them, but I'm going to take one of them that's got extra votes, and it relates to what you're just saying. And it said, how did we resolve our differences when writing the book? Because it gets at what you're just saying a little bit about how do you actually use it. Once you have the model and know the model, how do you go deeper with it so you can actually use it to be of value?
Well, the first step in that, and this is like kind of a prelude to how we resolve differences in writing the book, is if we push past the surface level understanding of just like, hey, I understand the behaviors and I can joke about them and the differences, and they're kind of funny to talk about. If I get down to the idea that, this really is, these external behaviors we see are expressions of internal needs. And if I can get comfortable with the idea that people have certain social and emotional needs, and if I can connect to that in a better way, then I probably won't have conflict with them. It's like if I rob people of water or air, they're probably going to fight me because they need them. It's not debatable. And just like we have physical needs, we have emotional and social needs. And if we can position ourselves to feed those needs and get past the surface level stuff, then we can make connection with each other, and we can interact in better ways. We can work together to solve problems. So what that means is when we were writing the book, now, so it goes back a while, but basically, I mean, here's the gist of it. First of all, it starts with the idea that we trust and respect each other a great deal. It starts at that level, which is completely separate from the DISC model. I mean, if we don't have that foundation, even the DISC model probably isn't going to help.
It isn't going to help.
So we both trust and respect each other, and we have a desire to build a connection so that we can work together. And in writing the book, basically what we did was we came up with a plan for how are we going to divide up this content. Okay, now that fed my need.
For there to be a plan.
Have a plan.
Because let's just say, we had both written books. We had not written a book together, us together, or with somebody else. So we were having to figure it out on the fly, which was happy. I was happier with than Guy. So we got to have a plan. Go ahead.
We have to have a plan. I'm comfortable with adjusting the plan. I'm not comfortable with having no plan. So we had a plan, which fed my need. And then what each of us did was we basically chopped up the book into pieces that we would each take a first shot at. And then we swapped. So whatever chapter I wrote, Kevin would review and edit and comment on. And whatever chapter Kevin wrote, I would review and edit and comment on. And then we would discuss and combine those after we both had a shot at it.
Can I add one thing to that?
Absolutely.
And we picked the sections to start with that we had the most experience or really more passion about. So if you have a copy or get a copy of From Book to Boss, you'll see that we talk in the section about communication skills. We talk a little bit about DISC. That's Guy's passion. He's the expert. I know more than the average bear. I think maybe more than the average bear's average bear. But the point is, not as much about his Guy. And so he took the first shot there. And what I was able to do was pull him back from all of his high detail tendencies and say, Guy, whoa, this isn't a book only about, we got to pull back, buddy. And so we were able to complement each other.
And then we talked about it and resolved whatever. Actually, I don't recall any major differences. And I think it goes back to the foundational idea, the mutual trust and respect is probably the bigger issue for why it was relatively easy for us to do the process together.
Okay, so there's a question here. I haven't even seen this one, but it's got 6 votes, Guy. So I'm going to ask this one. Okay. I'm turning this over to the peanut gallery. I mean, the community. So why do our scores change over time? And how do we know quickly what other people have for their types? 2 different and important questions.
So what generally happens, and here's the challenge. I have to speak in generalities, not specifics, because each person has their own life experience and all that kind of, which is actually one of the dangers, right? Is we get too specific. We use the model to describe a person rather than use the model as a framework to hear what they're saying. But the
that's because they're a C. That's why they're doing that. That's what we got to avoid. Go ahead.
Yeah. As opposed to, what I hear them saying is they're interested in details, and probably I should feed that. As you know, so you keep it more of a listening rather than a labeling. But
really good. I don't think I've ever say that before.
I'm sorry, Kevin, that broke up for me. I didn't hear it.
I said you really listening. Oh, we've got you, Guy. If you can hear me.
Yeah, it got garbled. I couldn't tell what you said.
It was a compliment. Just move on.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So what tends to happen is in the DISC assessment, depending on who provides the assessment, because there are multiple publishers of it, there's usually some description of what we'll call natural style and adapted style. Natural style is the stuff that's more, the more genetically based, that's how I grew up. That's kind of the core of who I am. And adapted style is how we adjust and adapt to our environment. It's a recognition that whatever behaviors we put on or approaches we take are a combination of both our predisposition and our experiences. What is generally true is the core natural style doesn't change too much, although the adaptive style will, because we learn and grow and develop and adjust. It's part of the maturation process. And
there was a bunch of conversation about that yesterday. I don't know if you were able to join us for Jennifer Conweiler yesterday.
I did. Yes.
I thought you were there. And there was a lot of stuff in the chat about that we couldn't really get to yesterday. And if you missed Jennifer, we talked about creating a workplace. I don't have the words right. I've got it here. Getting the words right, but creating an introvert-friendly workplace, right? Mm-hmm. So, in fact, we're going to give away a copy of that book later to a random person in the chat. So be thinking about that, Lisa.
So that was why the numbers changed. What was the second part of that question again?
Second part of the question. Oh, geez. Now I got to go back and find it. How do we quickly figure out I'm paraphrasing. How do we quickly figure out other people's types?
So I'm going to it's a statistical assessment, basically. I'm going to say that the first thing that you're going to notice is probably their pace and engagement. So you'll probably be able to tell when you first meet somebody that are more outgoing or more reserved. That typically is surface level. You just see it. If they lean forward and talk fast, they're probably outgoing. And if they kind of stand back a little bit and engage more slowly, they're probably more reserved. Even that's not a perfect assessment. It's a good guess. And then if you just go with the percentages, roughly 65% of the population is more people-oriented than task-oriented. So 6 or 7 times out of 10, when you meet somebody randomly out on the street, they're going to be more people-oriented than task-oriented. So assume they are. We don't know. Just assume they are. And then start there. And if you even bigger percentage kind of perspective, like 90% of the population at least has some people-oriented trait in their blend. So you won't be too far, even if you don't get their primary trait. So match their pace, assume they're people-oriented, and adjust based on what you see from there.
So it appears that I can't be seen. And if that's still true, okay,
I see you now. You were gone for a minute, but you're back for me.
Oh, I'm back. So that's part of the lag. Okay, cool. Oh, cool, everybody. If that happens again, Marissa, I think the right answer is for one of you guys to come and be here so that I, as an admin, so that I could leave and come back and try it. But I think, yeah, there you go. Anyway, we're gonna keep rocking and rolling here, and I'm gonna go to another one of the questions. And we have now officially broken the record for most questions in a session. Everybody. Here's the next highest voted question. Well, we're going to go to the one after that. First of all, Guy, what's your personality? What's your disc?
CDS, CASD. Probably better to say not I.
And guess what? My primary trait is, everybody, I, not, and the opposite of Guy's primary C. I am an ID, if anyone's going to ask that, and maybe it's actually been asked down below. So there is another question here. Kevin, do you think that at times being outgoing, high energy can cause issues? Meaning, perhaps you're perceived as not being serious. I ask as my style is high energy and outgoing myself. So I'm going to comment, and then I'm going to let the guy wants to add to that. So, of course it can, 100%. And so one of the things that we've got to be careful about, again, regardless of what model you use, is to say, well, I'm an I. So people just have to take it that I'm an I and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they just have to understand that that's my style. No. We need to understand that. And yeah, people can understand that. Guy understands that. People that know me know that, even if they don't know D, I, S, and C. Mm-hmm. But I have to be willing to flex, as do all of us.
Right.
We all have all those things. Mm-hmm. Listen, everybody on this team, on my team, our team knows that there are times when I am very detail oriented. It's not often, but when I am, it's probably more so than anybody else on the team. And now, if I have to do that all day long, I'm tired. Mm-hmm. So I have to realize that now. And can we be high energy and still be serious? I believe we absolutely can be.
Yes.
And I would like to hope that people, while we've tried to have fun here, that it's not been frivolous here. And so, yeah, it's not. We've got to recognize that we're trying to communicate with everyone else, and leaders go first. We've got to go meet others and meet their needs. If you've been listening to Guy, that's what he's been saying all the way through. You got to understand their needs and meet them.
And so if I'm going to build on that, Kevin, so could somebody with inspiring traits be perceived as not serious enough? Could, if they take it out of control. But you could make that comment about any of the 4 styles. It's just a different version of the statement. Like the version for me with C traits is, can't you be boring and negative as a person with C traits? Oh yeah. Yeah. If I go too deep in the C quadrant and get too engaged and I need details and push and ask questions, then I become either boring or perceived as negative. So I have to be aware that that's how I'm perceived. So to Kevin's point, my adjustment is to try to be a little less serious and to make room for people to have some fun and laugh and not to sit in judgment of them just because they're having a good time. So, and maybe even join them. Shocking idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet if Angie's on downstairs, she remembers the day that we had a photographer here taking pictures of Guy and I, probably for the book actually. And we had to basically bribe Guy to smile. He said he was looking in his mirror, practicing how to smile for these pictures. So, you guys can take that. I'm not judging. Yeah, there you go. We talk about ice cream and coupons.
I'm
there
in.
You go. He's smiling. There you go. And we've got so many questions. Oh my goodness. I'm looking at the time to see when we got a few more minutes. I'm going to go ahead and give away the Twitter winner. It's it's Steph. Her Twitter handle is MARENCO1019, and she wins a copy of Nate's book. So, Steph, you're going to win a copy of this. We'll make sure we get that to you. And if you're listening, Steph, we need your mailing address. So Lisa will put that in there. So you got to tell us that, and we'll take care of that. We're going to move that book out of my way for a little bit. So, Guy, there's like 20 questions in there. Can you just go pick one? Thank you, Lisa, for that. Can you just go pick one and we'll do that drawing right now? We're going to ask Guy some more questions before we're done, but go ahead and do that. I need to get that taken care of because we promised.
So I'm going to pick it. I'm just grabbing a name. I see Cameron.
Cameron, copies of both From Bud to Boss and My Journey from Bud to Boss, a true workbook to help you put into practice all the ideas in the book. We're really proud of this puppy right here. And there you go. So there you go. That's what's going to go to Cameron. Cameron's got to put his stuff in over there. Lisa, can you give me I'm going to need 3 things from you in a minute, Lisa. I'm going to need a random chat person. And then I'm going to need 2 of the people that gave us the question mark and said, I've never taken disc. And we'll take care of the 2 of you. But let me ask you a couple of the questions, Guy, that I've been asking everybody all week, and I know you've been here a little bit. And, I think I knew when we did this that we probably should have taken the whole morning and not just an hour. And so I'm going to apologize in advance to the rest of you, all of which you say, well, why don't you have Guy longer? We'll figure out a way to do something again where we can do this. And, what's happened now, guys, we got all these folks that are going to want you more. So we'll figure out sometime in the next few months, guys, we'll do something else. And because you're here, you'll get that email. And I'm just making a commitment to you that we'll do something in a Q&A or a webinar format of some sort. And Adrian will make sure that I don't forget to do that. Okay. All right. See, Marissa just said, it sounds like we need to do another event. All right. We're getting yeses. So I promise you all we'll do it. Not exactly sure when, but we'll do it. Okay. So, but I have some other questions we've been asking everybody, Guy.
Okay.
Number 1, where'd you go to college?
NC State for undergrad and Rutgers for master's.
There you go. We're asking everybody because there was so much conversation. I'm sure you're shocked on the first morning when with my co-host being Adrian, that there'd be a whole conversation about college.
I'm surprised. Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica. I agree. Okay. What have you done, Guy Harris, to stay sane and have fun during the pandemic besides hit your head, which you did?
Yes, I did hit my head. That's a whole different story. So one of the big things is we planned a 3-week time to go get our grandchildren and spend some time with just my wife and our grandchildren together at our house. And that was one of the really awesome things of this summer that we did. It wound up costing us 7 weeks to get those 3 weeks because of quarantine requirements and all this other stuff. And we're in South Carolina and they're in New York, but it was worth it. So.
And by the way, you can all duly note that it's more than just ice cream and coupons that will make Guy Harris smile. I'm talking about those grandbabies.
Grandchildren,
You get a smile
yes.
from Guy Harris too.
Smile.
That's for sure. What's one thing, Guy, that maybe because how do we use some of these ideas in a pandemic, or just what's one idea that you want to share with everybody today that maybe you feel led to say, this is the thing I want to tell everybody today? Biggest tip.
The biggest tip is, I guess it'd be to make sure that whatever model you use, DISC model, MBTI, True Color, Social Styles, whatever.
Insights, animals, colors, pick it, right?
You know, they're like probably 30 or 40 commercially available models. Make sure that you view it through the lens of, this is a way for me to understand and connect with another person, to maybe better understand how they view and interact and engage with the world, rather than try to label them and put them in a box. If you could get that idea, this is a way for me to, at least for a moment, enter their world, so that maybe I can hear myself the way they hear me, or maybe I can see this situation the way they see it, so that we can build some connection, rather than we just have friction because we do it differently.
I may have went to those questions a little early because we still have some time now that I look
Okay.
again. So
All right.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you to go. You can see those questions. Why don't you pick one that we didn't ask? I'll give you a second to find one.
Yeah.
While I ask Lisa to go ahead and put up the random winner from the chat that you're picking, Lisa, so we can give them a copy of this while Guy's picking a question. So we're going to give a copy of Jennifer's book from yesterday. So
That's a good idea. So I'm going to grab a question here that helps me kind of touch on a couple of points all at once. And
okay, so hold that for 1 second. So first of all, Lisa, I don't know if you did this randomly or whatever, but Bonnie, I know who Bonnie is. I'm pretty sure Bonnie. If you're the Bonnie, I think you are from Kalamazoo. Put a yes in there for me. And the other thing, or near Kalamazoo, and the other thing is Bonnie asked a question about being high energy like me. So this is perfect for a leader in an organization to have this book. So it's super awesome that that's who you picked, Lisa. So you had a couple questions. Go for it.
So a question is, this is from Sue France. Can you be equal in all four styles and therefore build relationships more equally? So I'm going to answer, that's kind of two questions. Can you be equal in all four styles? Of course you can. It is not common. It's perfectly normal. The truth is that the DISC model describes 4 ways of communicating, and all of us use some of all 4 to a certain extent. What tends to be true is that most of us will fall into using one of them more than the others, and a second one maybe a little bit more than the other 2. So most people are going to have what's called a primary and a secondary. That is the most common case, about 80% of the time. Is it possible for somebody to have all 4 traits in equal measure? Yes. Not as common.
Statistically possible, right?
Statistically possible, completely in the range of normal. It's not the most common observation. So, but in reality, we're all a blend of all 4. It's just how much of the time do we use each one? That's really more the issue. Which is why we don't want to use it as a label. It's a way to understand, not to label.
So, Jessica just asked, do you do motivators with the DISC? Do you want to comment on that at all real quick?
I think that's a reference to a very specific version of the DISC assessment that looks at motivators. And I think it's D with a little ISC, I think. That's a trademarked version. That's not us. Do we touch on what motivates people based on their style? Yes. We don't.
And you've heard some of that today, right?
Yeah. Do we use the term in kind of the trademarked copyrighted way? No, we do not, because we don't want to violate their copyright. Do we talk about the concept? Yes.
All right. I'm just going to say this to you, Sue, that you were that winner that Guy picked. So you got to make sure you let us know at info@kevineikenberry.com and say that I won Jennifer's book, so we can make sure we get that to you.
Yeah.
So Guy, there's something else that we built, that you built a couple of years ago that we're pretty proud of. Is we're here today talking about with leaders, and we're talking about DISC and those sorts of things. But we find that one of the great uses of this tool, we've been talking about the idea of how do we better understand each other and how do we communicate with each other better? And so we created a team report.
Yep.
So can you talk about that for a second? Now, and so before he does that, everybody, you can't use our team report unless your people did their DISC assessment with us, because we can't do the report. But if you do that, talk about what the team report does and its value and all that stuff.
So the team report collects all of the individual inputs from the members of your team who, as Kevin said, have taken our assessment, because we have to have access to the database. And we combine that into a report and evaluate what we call your team environment, meaning that is your team primarily focused in one of the 4 quadrants, or or 2 of the quadrants, so that you can get a way of looking at your team, the team dynamic in terms of how it might be perceived and how it might make decisions and how it might interact, using the DISC model as a framework to understand the team dynamic. And then that helps you understand what are the potential areas for groupthink? What are some of the potential issues your team might have interacting with another team? What are some potential conflict points? I can't tell you where those conflict points are. We can't say, here are some places for you to look at. And then we give you some questions and some conversation starters to help you engage with your team around what the report says, and use this report as an objective starter to have conversations within your team, so you can help your team get better, learn more about each other, and learn how you as a team can interact and engage better.
And as Angie said, we did it when we were testing it. We did it with our team. It was very, very, very insightful, and Guy led us through that. And so we try to give you with that report enough stuff to help you facilitate it, but we also have a facilitator's guide to help you really do that more effectively. And all that's available. You can get all that. You've seen the links there. You can reach out to us later. You can reach out to info@kevineikenberry.com and say, we'd like to talk to somebody about that, and we can do enter all that stuff. So Lisa, if you can get ready to type in the chat the 2 folks that are going to get free assessments, that's great. And we're still waiting for our guests, so that's for our next guest. So I'm going to keep you here, Guy.
Okay.
Until we know that Mike is ready. So why don't we grab another question? Why don't you grab another question down there while he's getting that for us?
Let me just kind of scroll through here. And
while he's doing that, there you see Cheryl and Kirsten. And someone make sure we capture Kirsten, because she may have just left. But we make sure that, Cheryl, if you'll make sure you send an email. And in your email, we need to make sure first, last, and email address, so that we make sure you get your free DISC assessment, your complete free DISC assessment. And if someone on the team can remember that we need to tell Kirsten that when she gets back at 1:00, which apparently she's going to be back then. Or you can click that button. There you go. It's in there for the free one. All right. You got another question for us, Guy?
Yeah. So there's a question. So it goes back to the title. This is from Jennifer about wondering what is beneath the models they want to tip us off to. And we sort of touched on it, but I want to make it very explicit. What's behind the models is trying to understand this very complex thing of human behavior and come up with some sort of objective way to discuss the differences we have with others, so that we can talk about them without labeling and judging. Like, for example, Kevin can talk with me. We're in a meeting. Kevin can talk with me about sounding like I'm questioning the direction we're headed or critical of a path, as opposed to labeling me and say, Guy, why are you always so negative? So he has a way to talk about it that doesn't feel so personal and attacking, so that we can have conversations that help us navigate these differences. And what's behind the models is just an effort to try to understand the needs and drives and perspectives of people, so that we can find a way to connect and communicate with each other in more productive ways and actually get some stuff done, rather than get locked in a negative conflict cycle that really spins out of control and doesn't accomplish anything. What's behind it is understanding human needs and preferences, not about labeling styles.
And if you were with us the other day when Nate Regier was with us on Tuesday, he made a statement. He said, the map is not the terrain. And what the idea is, and we were talking about, he has a different model that he uses, but the points that he was making, in fact, it would be really cool to get the 3 of us on, and then awesome. To get me out of it, right? To get me out of it. The team over here, and I'm pointing at the other channel that I have that I'm watching, is saying, Okay. Thanks, Marissa. I got it. We're going to wait another minute or so, and then we'll do that. I had a crazy idea a couple of years ago that said, what if we tried to help people understand the model by talking about pop culture stuff? So can you talk briefly about that? And if the team can put up the disc, there's a disc blog, and on that blog, we've done some of these things where we've taken pop culture stuff and movies, and talk about that just for a second.
So it's an effort to help make the disc model connect to experiences people are having in the world with television shows, movies, plays. And I don't remember all of them.
Star Wars, The Godfather. Chuck's helping me here.
Yeah,
Star Wars, The Godfather, Stranger Things,
Peanuts. I think we did a thing with Hamilton.
I think we did Hamilton.
And so it's a way to take the disc model and look at the characters you see in this particular pop culture entertainment piece and see if you can observe their behaviors. You're not emotionally connected to it, so you can observe their behaviors through the disc lens, so that hopefully it helps you have a deeper and richer understanding of what the disc model really means and how it applies.
The Crown is showing up. Orange is the New Black. Like there's I can't even remember. Most of these things I've never watched, so I couldn't be of much help. But we've done a whole, I mean, if you got everything from Star Wars to The Voice, you got a range of stuff here, folks. And Peanuts, for heaven's sakes. This is one of the first ones we did was Peanuts, if I remember right. So there you go. So the disc blog, and there's a link to it there.